Hello and welcome back to 365 Days with mxmtoon. I'm Maia, a singer, songwriter, video maker, Oakland native, and occasional lawbreaker. Nothing too serious. I'm also a big fan of history. I love untold stories, gross facts, hidden secrets, anything weird, dark, and funky from the past. Each day, I'm going to share a few of my favorite deep cuts with you. So let's take a look at today's stories.
It's 365 with mxmtoon. New facts every day, so don't leave too soon. I'm gonna teach you stuff, no it won't be tough. Gonna go a year till you've had enough. It's 365 mxmtoon.
On October 2nd, 1967, Thurgood Marshall was sworn into the Supreme Court as its first black justice. Marshall was already used to making headlines in the nation's highest court, having served as the chief counsel for the National Association of Colored People, or the NAACP, during the 1940s and the 1950s. As you may remember from our September 27th episode, Marshall was the attorney who convinced the Supreme Court to rule against segregation in the 1955 case Brown v. Board of Education. But how did he get here? Let's back up. Marshall was born in Baltimore, Maryland, in 1908. His father was a railroad porter and his mother was a teacher. His ancestors on both sides of his family had been slaves. Marshall's father used to take Marshall and his brother to watch court cases when they were kids, and regularly encouraged debates over current events at the dinner table. So it's not really much of a surprise that Marshall ended up becoming a lawyer. In 1925, Marshall started college at Lincoln University, a historically black university where his classmates included poet Langston Hughes and musician Cab Calloway. It took him a while to find his footing. Apparently, Marshall was kind of a bad boy, and Hughes said he was rough and ready, loud and wrong. But eventually he graduated with honors and started matriculating at Howard University School of Law. He wanted to go to the University of Maryland School of Law, but was rejected, just for being black. It was at Howard that Marshall became truly dedicated to fighting for justice. He studied under Charles Hamilton Houston, the law school's dean, who later served as the litigation director of the NAACP. Houston believed strongly that the law could be used to dismantle discrimination, and after he started working for the NAACP, he himself was involved in every civil rights case that came before the Supreme Court up until Brown v. Board of Education. A fun fact about Thurgood Marshall: Sidney Poitier portrayed him in the 1991 Brown v. Board of Education miniseries, Separate but Equal. He's also been portrayed by Lawrence Fishburne and Chadwick Boseman. In 1933, Marshall graduated from Howard at the top of his class, armed with the determination to use his legal education to fight against discrimination. Houston left Howard for the NAACP in 1935, and Marshall joined him the following year. In 1938, the student became the master, and Marshall took over Houston's role, fighting over a dozen segregation-related cases, including Brown v. Board of Education, and cementing his place in civil rights history. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy appointed Marshall to the U.S. Court of Appeals, an appointment Republicans held up. And in 1965, President Lyndon B. Johnson bumped him up to Solicitor General of the United States. 2 years later, on June 13th, 1967, Johnson nominated him to the Supreme Court, saying it was the right thing to do, the right time to do it, the right man, and the right place. On August 30th, the Senate confirmed him by a vote of 69 to 11. 20 members abstained from the vote. Racism was and still is a very real thing. Marshall sat on the Supreme Court for 24 years, voting with the liberals and continually supporting civil rights. He supported abortion rights and voted to legalize abortion in the landmark 1971 case, Roe v. Wade. He voted to support the rights of criminal defendants and challenged discrimination based on race and sex. He opposed the death penalty and successfully voted to rule in 1972 that the death penalty was unconstitutional, though the ruling was overturned by another case 4 years later. He was very influential to young lawyers looking for justice, and one of his law clerks went on to be a pretty important legal figure herself, Elena Kagan, who President Barack Obama appointed to the Supreme Court in 2010. In 1991, Marshall decided to retire. His health was declining, and though he wasn't happy that a Republican, President George H.W. Bush, would replace him, he could no longer continue to sit on the court. Bush replaced him with Clarence Thomas, who was, he had some pretty serious issues. Marshall died of heart failure in 1993. He is buried in Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia. And now for our fun music fact of the day. On October 2nd, 1951, Sting, singer for the Police, was born. Sting, real name Gordon Sumner, started out as a teacher, but he ended up being the lead singer and principal songwriter for the Police from 1977 to 1984. He was the voice behind some of the band's biggest hits, like Don't Stand So Close to Me and Every Breath You Take, which netted Sting a Grammy for Song of the Year. Sting went solo in 1985, but his star didn't fall. Though things kicked off a little shaky, by the 1990s, he was back to winning Grammys, and he's still making music today. You've probably heard his old stuff, but a really fun fact, or maybe not that fun fact about Sting is this. Juice WRLD reworked one of Sting's old tracks, Shape of My Heart, in his 2018 track, Lucid Dreams. The track was a hit, but because the track interpolated some of Sting's music and Juice didn't get clearance in advance, Sting ended up taking the lion's share, even though he was already pretty rich. Juice WRLD sadly died in 2019. May he rest in peace. We have a special guest. Her name is Gia Woods. She's an indie pop artist, and she's going to talk to you about her debut EP.
Hey, I'm Gia Woods, and October 2nd is the day that I released my debut EP called Cut Season. I wrote this EP actually this time last year, which is so crazy to think about because I've come so far. I was just getting out of a toxic 4-year relationship, and I was completely heartbroken, and I was just locking myself in the studio every day, and I ended up having all these records and a full project without even knowing it. And it wasn't until I wrote Cut Season where I realized there was a whole EP right there. And now just looking back, it's so cool to see that I have grown so much. I'm so much more independent, and I never thought I would get over that relationship. And here I am. I can say that I've really gotten to know myself and grow from that experience. And now I just feel so much more confident being on my own and, never needing to feel validated by another person.
And for our final segment of the day, I am going to go into my personal history and see what I was up to on an October 2nd in my life. Oh my goodness. Okay, so it looks like on October 2nd, 2018, I surpassed 500,000 Spotify listeners, which is really crazy. I remember seeing that number on my artist profile and just being absolutely blown away at the fact that I was able to make that achievement. I remember passing 100,000 and that felt unreal, but the day that I surpassed 500,000 was insane. I think my dad took me out to go get my favorite iced coffee as a way to celebrate. So yeah, that was really cool. 2 years ago, I reached 500,000 listeners, and now I'm really lucky to have millions of people who listen to me every single month. So thanks so much for that. Yeah. And thank you all so much for listening. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Be sure to take a second and do me a personal favor. If you like this podcast, please go subscribe wherever you listen to it. It would mean the world to me. But I hope you enjoy this episode, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
It's 365 with mxmtoon. New facts every day, so don't leave too soon. I'm gonna teach you stuff, no it won't be tough. Gonna go a year till you've had enough. It's 365